discussion today is on e-bikes and safety and what the real issues are. We've got a great panel here of knowledgeable people throughout the industry, and I'll have them go through and introduce themselves. I am Tony Donaldson. I was the editor of Electric Bike Action for the past 7 years. A lot of experience in the industry and working with a lot of great people. So our panelists are...
Hi, my name is Kathleen Curtis. I am an attorney with Nyland Johnson Lewis in Minneapolis, and we work with a lot of micromobility and e-bike companies on product safety, warnings, instructions, regulatory issues, full gamut of things.
My name is James Diekmeyer. I'm the Director of Customer Experience at Aventon, and we make some pretty sweet e-bikes.
Hi, I'm Jason Kanegi. I'm CEO of Jackrabbit Mobility. We make the Jackrabbit. There's some Jackrabbits on my shirt here. I'm not just wearing a Hawaiian shirt for the fun of it. We're exhibiting as well, so come check it out. Jackrabbit's all about accessibility. Anybody can kind of ride a Jackrabbit is our goal, and so we need to make it safe. Hence, happy to be part of this panel.
Very good.
And he's using part of my name in his product. I'm Jack Gillen from Okai. I'm working in the retail space and getting all of our products, which are both scooters and e-bikes, into general retail availability. Thank you.
All right, very good. Let me Kathleen, why is it a good idea to have someone outside the company involved in developing things like user manuals or quick start guides or product labels?
Sure, I think it can be really helpful to have, whether it's legal or a product design firm or outside company, help review those sorts of things, just because you can get so involved in your product that you lose sight of some of the broader consumer base that might be using it, that maybe isn't as sophisticated, isn't doing the research, and so you really need to have clean eyes look at it and figure out the best way to have clear instructions and warnings that will work for not just the sophisticated product users, but anybody who might be picking up your product and trying it out. Tony,
can others jump in?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So, agree, and we've learned that it's a very rapidly moving landscape, and we're in 100 or so dealers now, and some Army Air Force bases, right? They have pretty high standards. We have to pass a lot of tests, right? And no one, to an extent. Can anyone hear me? Okay, that's working. Let's see if it stays that way. We've had a fair amount of folks from within the industry, from big box retailers, ask the questions of like, what actually is appropriate for this class vehicle versus that class vehicle. There's all kinds. There's vehicles with 2 wheels, 3 wheels, 1 wheel, et cetera, et cetera. And when you involve the various different test houses, I'll just say, for example, right, that can do the various different CPSC, UL testing, things along those lines, and the retailers themselves, like that seems to be very productive, I'll say, right? They all want to work together, and they all actually want to have safety as well, right? And so we're glad we took that path, kind of, right, ourselves, and we see it evolving, and we see people being flexible, and everyone's pretty much wants to make the industry better, right? And safe. And so test houses, I especially like to involve as it evolves.
All right.
Like, when do you need UL 2272 versus 2489, 2849? Yeah, right.
All right. Okay, so for, say, Aventon, where do you start with designing bikes and like making sure that they're safe, making sure that they've got strong enough brakes, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so Aventon really looks at the historical and industry veterans as like, hey, what do you think is appropriate after you've ridden this bike in our test, kind of our testing of bikes? We have almost everyone in the company ride our bikes before we put them out to market, and we really rely on the manufacturers of these brakes and other design features to make sure that the bikes are going to be safe. So I'd say it's a lot of just historical information, and then what Kathleen said, right? Let's get people that don't operate bikes, are not familiar with some of these products, and get their feedback. Oh, maybe we do need something a little bit stronger, right? I always like to kind of use my older mother, right? If I would let my mother ride this bike, I think the bike's pretty safe. So yeah.
All right, fair enough. Anybody else?
Yeah, so design for safety is absolutely crucial. We started out in the shared bike and scooter space, so we're kind of pavement proven across the world already. So we learned a lot of issues about durability, frame design, lots of issues where things can get wobbly, and when things get wobbly, it's very unsafe. So we've taken that and we brought that into the consumer space. We're just new into the consumer space in the last year and a half. What we did was take some of our learnings from our scooters, which is apply lots more visibility to bikes where, people pimp out their bikes and they put, lights, they're added on. We put lights directly into our frames, for example, so you can see sideways. We have a police patroller version, and the law enforcement people like that. Visibility is key, and I think bike manufacturers don't embrace that enough. And in fact, we have a new bike coming out called the EB60, and the whole front handlebar is a light panel, right?
Oh,
so,
very cool.
So number one, visibility, durability, because as things, kind of degrade over a period of time, you don't want it to become unsafe, and that's what we've learned in this space.
Okay, very good. Well, and along the lines of pimping out your bike, one of the problems that we have is people modifying their bikes, especially the motor systems and batteries. What are the pitfalls of that, potentially?
Well, I'll go ahead and jump in on that one. I like talking to cyclists, right? It's a whole different other lingo, and then when you go into the e-space, it's there is a stratification of course, people that are pure bike cyclists. The mental idea of Ned Flanders pops into play when he's skiing. Kind of they're svelte and sleek. There's other bicyclists that are less. They just kind of just roll up their pants and go for it, right? So, in that space. You have to be careful with people that haven't ridden a bike for 30 years and they're getting an e-bike. So in that space where you want to go full throttle immediately, right, we hide some of those extra speeds behind software. So that would be one, right, in terms of what's the built-in pimping, as it were, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of manufacturers do that. The bikes can go a little bit faster, you use a little bit more battery, and you don't get as much range, right? But if you need to get someplace quicker or whatever, it's possible in most bikes, and we do the same. So then just making sure that people know that the inherent, right? I mean, bikes are what's called in scooter space zero start, right? Zero start means you push the button even accidentally and the bike's off, right? So those elements, right? You can turn that off. You can, like depending on the power level and so forth. So, the modifications that you do, you want to make it out of the box very safe for people as is, right? And then anything else that they add on is usually lighting, which is good. I encourage like complete Philippinization, like they do of their mopeds and so forth. I mean, modders kind of grew in the English moped space with the Vespas back in the 60s. Great film called Quadrophenia about it, where they had 8 mirrors on either side, and Sting was in the film, and it was a Who film. So this modding stuff, actually with the mirrors, was really good. I mean, like you could see a little bit more, right? So yes, controlling that is very important, and familiarity as much as possible for the person riding it is absolutely crucial. So get in slowly into it.
Yeah, I'd like to add on top of that, since e-bikes have been starting to come to America, most bike people have tried to make them faster, right? I remember some of the first e-bikes that landed, we figured out how to blip the brakes to get it to pop wheelies really easy, right? And these are pretty low power mid-drive bikes. And I think it really comes from educating the consumer on what actually is safe, right? We are all going to modify our products. We can't stop the consumer from putting a different controller in or putting a bigger battery in or modifying the battery at all, because people will find a way around that. It's really going to come from what is safe riding etiquette, what is kind of the best ways to use that product and the best ways to enjoy that product is really what's going to keep people from getting too far out there. Because I've seen some pretty powerful e-bikes from the garage, guys doing 65 miles an hour, right? And they're all homegrown. So it really comes from using those things responsibly in safe places and educating those consumers to do that.
We like customization a lot at Jackrabbit. We sell fleets of Jackrabbits because since they're so easy to ride, anybody can kind of ride them sort of situation. So we do like custom branding on it, right? So it's not me. I'm not wearing it in their mic. Yeah. So we like it, and we have people who make custom mod foot pegs and things like that. Sometimes put on different handlebars, things like that. We try to just communicate, and you said a key word there, education. I mean, like, it's great that e-bikes there's good awareness. Everyone sees shared scooters, everyone sees e-bikes. We need to, as an industry, somewhat transition into more education now that everyone knows about them, kind of, right? It's not like it was never present before, but let's turn up the knob on education. And we try to educate our consumers as well. It's like, hey, if you put BMX handlebars on it, you need to make sure that there is, sufficient, we say this to our dealers as well, sufficient cable length, right? So that you can actually turn it and you're not going to have an unintended consequence from that, right? Beyond that, modifying electrical systems, we're like, no. Like, that's our attitude, of course, right? And there's companies and some OEMs, manufacturers here, that have a very strict policy against no modifications, and I think they do it, for a combination. You're out of warranty if you modify your electrical systems with us, right? And that actually matters, and our consumers and definitely our dealers care about that, right? So that is one way. There's other reasons why people don't want modifications, just from marketing control, kind of, right? As well, kind of, right, and selling accessories and things, right? But I guess that is a key kind of line, that I think is an important line to emphasize. Modifying electrical systems, you really need to know what you're doing. And I'm not saying that that should never happen, but there should be education and there should be methods to kind of verify those implementations as well. And there's very well-respected companies that do that sort of work now out there as well. So yeah.
Yeah, right.
And as a lawyer, I will say that everything they're saying here brings joy to my heart, that you are talking about educating consumers and acknowledging that these aftermarket modifications are going to happen. So are you giving them the appropriate information about how to continue to use the product safely? And it's really encouraging that the industry is doing that.
Do you see more people being injured by modified bikes over regular e-bikes?
That's a good question. I don't know that there are any statistics that necessarily say that. I think the bigger concern is, are they messing with the electrical system or the battery? And then that's where we run into issues like battery fires, and that prompts regulatory issues like what we see in New York, and that creates headaches for manufacturers.
Well, some of the battery problems, I used to have a lot of different bikes at the warehouse that I was doing reviews on. We would have a table full of chargers with no name on it, and they all have the same connector. So one of the things that I like that Aventon does, or Aventon, and I don't know if you guys do this, your name is on the charger, and that's so important. Just put a sticker on there or something.
And to compound on that, on their chargers, they are actually talking to the BMS, right? And so that's why it's so crucial to use the OE charger on all products, right? Because there's special safeguards put into that so that we don't have any kind of bigger issues. So,
Right.
Yeah, just to add a little bit to that. Yeah, Underwriter Laboratory is your friend when it comes to chargers and battery and form factor. And New York is going to make sure it's going to happen also, right? So they're not going to let you sell a battery without being UL, right, at all. Zip, I mean, the laws coming in. And we wholly discourage, I mean, people are asking, look, can I double my range with adding a battery? Go, no, no, absolutely not. Do not touch it. Our BMS is completely connected to this particular battery, right? So almost verboten.
You've spent all the time and energy and expertise into designing something that works, and then somebody thinks they're going to come in and
well,
do
more than
something
that, we bought a company to do it. We're vertically integrated with our battery packs, right? So we buy the standard cells and we build our own battery packs. Right? Come on over to our stand and I'll show you 14 pounds, 8 ounces of pure battery pack that we've made ourselves. It's really important that you get that right.
And UL testing tests the entire system, right? I mean, there's 2271, you test the battery, but then, you know, the full system test tests everything. But people will modify it, right, as well, and especially if you're bigger guys, right, you know, then folks will come out. So unless you build in some form of proprietary circuitry to prevent, you know, from being easily copied, right, you know, it will happen, right, you know. So again, it somewhat gets to the education sort of type topic as well, right, you know, what are good battery charging practices, kind of, right, you know, and it's not just the battery itself, of course, it's, you know, it's the connections and for the charger as well. So again, we just need as an industry to like turn the knob up, and we are towards this whole education program.
I mean, the answer is just buy another battery. We made it removable. Put it on the back rack. That's it.
All right. Well, I think we're going to see that URL certification demand spread nationwide. I'm pretty sure that that's coming. What do you guys do to educate your consumers as far as safety? Like, what do you do from the time that they buy it? I mean, where does that education come in?
So I think the standard stuff is like what comes with the bike, right? Making publications and user manuals very, very easy to get to is extremely important. On top of that, we're really focusing this year at Eventon is teaching riding etiquette, right? Like, you know, when you should be riding on a sidewalk, if or not, right? What is required in different states for different classifications of bikes. You know, how to fit a helmet properly, what footwear to wear when you're riding. All that kind of comes from post-purchase marketing and in all of our channels as much as we can, because that's what's going to really carry our kind of industry or our product beyond kind of like this boom of accessibility right now over the past 3 years, is having consumers use the product responsibly, and that comes from safety, really, not just with the product and charging, and all those things are very important, but making sure that we don't make other pedestrians and other motorists on the road upset at us with our cool new toys.
Very good.
So we put a touch screen into our bike.
Okay.
It helps with not having to pull out your app all the time. Does 90% of what our app does, for example. Very easily discoverable. And we also, I guess, other steps that we take are, we obviously take what I refer to as Tinglish, translated English, and make sure it's written for the American market, okay? It happens with everybody. I mean, you know, it's a different culture in China. As good as they are, we go and improve it. We have a lot of videos too. I mean, assembly videos are very important. And what I try to tell people is there's so much of this bike that comes factory tuned. You don't have to worry about it, okay? Number one. But the only things you're gonna have to really change are this. Everything else, as in like, you're gonna tighten the brakes, right? So everything else, go to a bike store, right? And it's standard componentry, and so that would be the kind of the standard thing, because there's a lot of tribal knowledge and parental knowledge and even school knowledge. Schools used to teach bikes, you know, turning and all that other stuff in curriculum. Now it's not so much, I checked recently. But bikes have been around for 205 years, so there's a lot of knowledge already there, and we're just trying to, you know, make sure they understand the new stuff.
Yeah, and I agree. We like the video approach as well, and I'll just say somewhat the obvious. You got to try to make it fun as well. I mean, there's a ton of utility in these things, right? but people are riding them because they're fun, right? And so every thought, and using people finally know how to use QR codes, right? And so now if you can scan a QR code, right, and get a very quick, effective, short attention span holding video for 60 seconds, 2 minutes, kind of right, that's like, let's get you set up and riding safely, kind of right, and tell them the best practices, right, but it does, all this interrelates, everything we've been talking about here, from the mods sort of type topic as well. We designed our bike to have certain affordances as well in it that make it really easy to get rolling, right? No distractions involved, and there isn't somebody riding double on the back of a jackrabbit, right? And that was designed on purpose as well. We're not coming out with a rear seat because it changes the ride dynamics drastically, kind of right.
Sure.
It's not that you can't do that. You just need to educate people that the ride dynamics change massively if you have a surfboard or a second person on the back of your bike as well. So you just have to educate. Again, word of the day.
I think what I'm hearing too is a lot of variety of types of education mechanisms. So it's the on-product labels, it's the screen that's on the bike, not just the app. It's videos on the website. You got to keep in mind that consumers learn information in a lot of different ways. So providing it in all those different mediums is really important. And it's important to make sure you're catering not just to the sophisticated tech-savvy people who might have been the initial purchasers of e-bikes. You can buy these now at Costco, so you got to keep in mind that you are educating consumers who are not just experienced cyclists or tech folks, but people like your mom who are picking it up at Costco and need to be able to know how to use this safely, even if they haven't ridden a bike in 25 years.
And redundant methods for that as well. Because very much we sell jackrabbits at like boat stores, right, and RV shops, and like there's even a shoe store I think that sells jackrabbits. So these are not people who necessarily have bike pumps, even kind of right as well. So a lot of institutional knowledge for bikes being around for a couple hundred years, right? But a lot of these people are like, yeah, I haven't ridden a bike in 20 years or whatever, right? But I'm seeing these things and I want to ride them. So yeah, QR codes are good, but you also have to have labeling on the bike. You have to have very short, quick start guides. All the old school and all the new school methods.
The amount of times I still have to remind people to put on a helmet, it's still crazy. We're used to buckling in a car, but if you don't have a helmet and you want to go someplace, it's not your first thought with the bike. So, we're re-ingraining, and we make sure that all of our Marcom material has, helmeted people always, all the time. My marketing manager said, "Why don't you wear one on the stage today?" I said, "No, it's okay." but it is really important. Just a simple helmet, right? You'd think, right, it would be there already in tribal.
We should be wearing helmets right now.
Yeah,
that would have been
absolutely.
good. Yeah, that would have been smart.
All the gear, all the time, right? As a motorcycle rider, also that's a common mantra, right? It's making sure that you have all the gear all the time because you have no idea what can happen.
I heard a great quote, and that was in Seattle. There's a Saturday night ride with all these enthusiasts, right? And their motto is "Dress for the slide and not the ride."
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, we're getting close on our time. Anybody have anything else to add?
One other thing related to the importance of emphasizing helmet safety and instructions and so forth is making sure that your marketing materials are consistent with whatever you're telling consumers in terms of instructions on how to safely use the product. If you are Jackrabbit and you are saying only one rider, do you have a Mother's Day ad that shows mom wearing a baby and not wearing a helmet? No, he obviously doesn't because he cares about safety. But that's something you want to keep in mind with your product and talk to your marketing team about is, are you keeping a consistent message between what you are trying to sell and what you are telling consumers about how to safely use your product?
I'm just going to add, I'm going to say the education word again, but getting more involvement from local communities and the government even as well, kind of right, because I think in California, our governor allocated some funds to the CHP, I think, that is going towards a program that I think is scheduled to have results this fall, for example, and then it's intended for schools, junior highs and high schools, to use that webpage and those resources, right? And if you go by a school and Southern California. We're in San Diego. North County, San Diego, you go by a junior high school, there's like 300 e-bikes outside of it, right? You know, and so it's very reasonable to rely on, encourage more like these sorts of, you know, pretty common sense stuff, but still, it needs to be said, it needs to be prevented, and then it will sink in, it will be adopted. And so more of that sort of type funding would be good as well, not to mention for bike lanes and all these other elements as well.
Driving here last night, there was a big billboard and said, "Mind bicyclists," as I was going 65 miles an hour on the highway.
That's off-putting.
Right? Well, no, it was great use of funds. I mean, it was good. It did, you know, like it will sink in with certain people, right? But I had one question. I asked it last year, and that is, how many people here came on e-mobility to this conference today? My God. Okay.
What about the
I
panels?
rented a car. I had to. I'm sorry. So same number as last year. 1. Oh, well, you're an addition, right? So I'm dumbfounded, right? When if you have local press or anybody else around here that doesn't come in on a bike or all that. I know some of the guys that have units outside did come, but I would encourage everybody, go get an e-bike, and it's a superpower for people my age.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you guys very much, and thank you guys for being here for our discussion.